Excellent. Thank you, Dan. Dan, do you want to kick us off or do you want me to muddle through it? Nope, you want me to
You
muddle
you
through
do you.
it. Good. I'm good at muddling through. Yeah, welcome to the dark mode, EMEA. This is the first one we're doing. We will see how it goes. The basic idea is we're going through and um, making sure dark mode works properly across all the different organizations in GitLab. Um, we've started working closely with some groups to get the initial things done. The remaining groups are going to be left a little bit more to their own devices. So we've put these in place so that people can come and ask us questions about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it affects them, and then the specifics of what their migrations are and what questions they have coming up from this. And anything else really. It's ask us anything. That's the whole point of it. Um, In the agenda right now, there are no questions, but I do see we have Michael on the call. So I wonder if you've come prepared with a question. I don't want to put you too much on the spot.
No, first time visitor, first time caller, first time speaker. Just here because code review is going through the assisted guidance of with help from Jeremy doing the audit on our pages right now. So I'm just here to see how this whole thing goes through. I've like seen some of the work that you guys have done around this stuff with the source code group so far. So that covers 80% of my stuff. But like, yeah, the merge request page has a lot of states to it. And I think, yeah, triggering them within the product is tricky sometimes. Yeah, I don't really have any questions, but I was wondering, because there's so many states to some of these components and screens, like part of this, have you identified any like need for tooling to like invoke specific states so that in further iterations, you don't have to go through this whole ordeal? Like it's just like a component testing, like the MR widget has like hundreds of different states depending on your configuration, depending if you're on premium or ultimate, and if you have security policies or not, or you have reports or not, if you have like merge request dependencies or not. It's just like so many cases. Yeah, to streamline some of this testing in the future, not only for dark mode, but for like normal. Like, what are the crazy states of this thing? Is that something you're looking into and working with groups to like, hey, this is a problem, or you don't see that as much of a problem, and it's just like with rely on the group to like, be proficient with their states.
It's definitely a problem. And before we were working with the groups, we were looking at things. We've described them as vertical and horizontal, right? So vertical is working on a specific page and working with the groups, and then horizontal would be where we say um, everything that needs the action design token will migrate all of them like horizontally across the product. And that meant that we would have to find so many random bits of the product in random states and all this thing, and that became a real problem for us. Um, we've looked into it a little bit. James has tried to build a tool where we kind of leverage the way our end-to-end tests work. So we see what props are being passed to components in the end-to-end tests, and then we try and render that component as it would appear in the end-to-end tests with these props. Um, it it mostly works, but the problem is because CSS, you can't be sure that you've rendered this component here and it just works, and that there's not CSS somewhere else on the page it should render on that modifies it again in some other way. So it's imperfect. Um, so yeah, there's no, I guess, official thing that we're doing to try and solve this because it is such a big problem across all of GitLab that we've had for so long. But we are totally open to suggestions on solving this, right? Like, um, it's just yeah, it's such a difficult problem, especially when it comes to CSS because of the way the cascade works. Um, does that answer the question there, Michael? Or
Yeah, Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Cool.
Cool. Dan's got a point there as well. I'll let him speak.
Yeah, we've been leaning heavily on the subject matter experts within the groups as well to help us identify these cases.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I was saying about the vertical and horizontal thing, right? Like if we're working vertically, we're working alongside the person who knows exactly how to set up the security vulnerability with no vulnerabilities, but something else widget, right? Like the weird edge cases of things. Um, Cool. Looks like Michael's adding another question in there. I see Eduardo and Taina on the call as well. If you have questions, please go add them to the agenda and we'll get to them. Thank you for joining. Michael, do you want to talk through your next question?
Yeah. So since there are no other things, I'll just throw in some other things. I just raised this in Slack around my preference for a dim dark mode. Yeah, then that's it. And like I think the current white on the dark mode that we have is a bit high contrast for myself. I was like, oh, I use most things in dark mode, but it's a GitLab. It's I use that like the bright shining light to keep my face lit up for video calls and stuff. But yeah, jokes aside, that's it. Yeah, just bring it up.
Yeah, thanks for bringing the request, Michael. It's definitely something that we're keen to support in the future. And as it says in as we spoke about in Slack, we aimed down the middle for this dark mode, not high contrast, not dimmed, to give us room to go either way. I genuinely believe if we're able to focus on a semantic implementation now, it will be trivial to add these extra modes in the future. So yeah, thanks for the request. Bear with us. Hopefully we can get a good implementation in place that lets us do these things really easily.
Yep, I totally agree.
I think as well for just to elaborate on that for the recording, like the reason we're doing design tokens for dark mode is almost exactly for things like this, right? So we can have different modes. Like dark mode is a mode, light mode is a mode, and then there's things like high contrast mode or dimmed mode, like you've said here, and design tokens allow us to do that a lot easier and change them modes to other things. Um, Not even just with color, right? Like eventually we can do it with other things going forward, but like um this is why we're going through and naming things semantically rather than this is blue, this is red, this is green. Um, cool. Any other questions from anyone else? Anything anyone wants to ask? See a note from Eduardo in the chat. Uh, any questions our team want to ask the people that are going to be using this?
I'd love to ask Eduardo a question if he doesn't mind answering. Have you used design tokens or dark mode in any of the MRs you've been working on yourself yet? If you are talking, Eduardo, I can't hear you, but that might be a me problem.
Oh,
There we go.
great. Yeah, no, I have a very limited experience. I have worked with dark mode very little. Maybe only in sign-in pages where this is really not that of a big issue, because I don't think ever going to be in dark mode the sign-in page. But anyway, because I work in the authentication area, I work in that space, but not much apart from that. I joined the meeting mainly to see what other people were asking.
That makes sense. Have you, to ask a different question then, have you used Tailwind classes yet in your work, and how have you found that?
I love Tailwind. I think is a great addition.
Where do you go to find out which Tailwind class to use for a specific thing?
Oh, this is an interview. I sometimes go to Tailwind. Others just I look for similar things in the code base.
Is there anything that how would you check if the class you've used is the one you expected?
Well, I see the effect, and if it does what it does, fine. But it's true that sometimes, for example, I've been working on classes that apparently they are deprecated, because maybe and it's not fully clear to me how do I know if a class is deprecated, and then there may be a superseding class that is more appropriate. So that has happened once, I think, in a review flag that. So maybe you can clarify about that.
And how can you talk a little bit more about how you realized it was deprecated? I think you said it.
The
The
reviewer,
reviewer.
yes, it was a UX researcher, and he's really good, and said, you were using this deprecated class, use this instead. Okay, good.
So we have many categories of deprecated classes. Like some are bootstrap classes, some are old GitLab utility classes, some are new GitLab utility classes that we've changed the names of. Some are, so do you remember which one of those it was?
No, I don't remember, to be honest.
No worries. There's been someone mentioned the idea of renaming deprecated classes to make it clear. That's an approach, but I don't like it because it can, it means changing everything across the entire code base, which is a lot of work and can cause merge conflicts, and is just sort of quite noisy. I'd like there to be more tooling around this so that, maybe ESLint could pick it up or something along those lines, so that you just told before you even commit that it's a deprecated class. So that's what I'd like to see.
I think that is the most sensible approach. Having this in ESLint and flag you are using actually something that is for one reason or another deprecated. Yeah.
It's maybe ESLint would be a good start, but these classes can appear anywhere. They can appear in Vue files, JS files, Haml and Ruby files. Some Ruby classes will pass down classes. So some Ruby files will pass down classes to be consumed by the front end. So yeah, something to think about how we'd do that.
I think to clarify why you're being interviewed on this one, Eduardo, it's like these are the kind of questions we want to pull out of people, right? We want to see where people go to use these things that we're we're putting out there, where they go to find more information about them, where they go to even understand which ones they should use and when, and all that sort of thing, right? Like we know we're not doing as well as we could be at that. So we're trying to figure out what people are currently doing to do that. And this has been helpful, right? Like hearing that you found out a class was deprecated from a reviewer is absolutely not where we want you to find that out, right? And that's an us problem, not a you problem, right? Like we should be making that much clearer somewhere else in linting or however it is. So thank you for raising that, right? Like that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to be asked in these AMAs.
No problem.
It's a test of us, not a test of you, right? Like
I believe also Peter Hegman has put together some kind of a website or something like that where you can see all the classes, or I don't know, or is integrated into the pajamas. I don't remember exactly, but I saw that at some point. Sorry that I cannot be more specific.
no, I think this is half the problem as well, right? We have lots of random places where something's kind of half there but not fully there, and getting that full picture is really difficult, right? Like even for us. And this is something that Mark's working on at the minute to try and find all of these little bits and pull them all into one under one roof, right? We don't know what that roof looks like at the minute, but we want the answer to be, where should I go to find anything about anything design system or design tokens, to be this one place, right? Like design.gitlab.com or whatever it is, right? Like these little tools they're great, but we want to try and house them all in the same space so that they're easier to find, right? And easier to send people to.
To me, the go-to places is pajamas for design overall strategies and things like that, and then a storybook for component base, and that's are my two go things places. Any more questions? Done.
No, this is super helpful.
Where do you see
Thank you.
yourself for the next 5 years, Eduardo? I did see a question on the agenda that was after this one. It looks like it's been removed. Was that am I remembering that right, or is my tired brain not in full working? Well, I mean, it clearly isn't. I can't finish a sentence, but
it was originally a comment, but Jan's question kind of like tied it in nicely to this, where on Slack he did ask the questions around the connection between communication with design tokens that exist for designers in Figma and things. And like today I learned that like, oh, it's actually needs to be translated somehow back to like tail one classes. So like cool. So yeah.
yeah, I just got off a call with Florrie about this as well. She's already finished the work she was assigned this milestone and is looking at this as like her next thing, starting now. Also an FYI for Mark, like reach out to Florrie on that and make sure you're aligned with where you're going.
Yes.
By the way, excellent work. The foundation teams are always doing such a fantastic job overall. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Eduardo. They're a great team. I get to point them. Cool. Any more from anyone else? Or should we give everyone 10 minutes back?